I walk away. Um, I have so much to talk about on why I joined the left and why I left the left, but I'm gonna try to keep it specifically towards the most recent issues. Um, Firstly, I'll talk about why I joined the left in the first place. I come from a pretty well-to-do background. Um, my parents are immigrants. They came here from Taiwan. For those of you who don't know, Taiwan was is mostly populated by Chinese that were kicked out by Mao. A lot of them are intellectuals. A lot of them were kind of higher in higher society, and Mao, and the Communist Manifesto sees them as evil. So he was determined to kill all of them. Hence why they moved to Taiwan. So the Taiwanese, or at least the Chinese coming from China to Taiwan during the 50s, had to start over. They had their wits, their education, and some finance that they took over. But in terms of the island itself, it was mostly a rural island of just the indigenous people. So they had to work really hard status within just a few decades. And then my parents and other immigrants, Taiwanese immigrants like them, had to come to America to also make it, and with a huge language barrier. So that already kind of started me off with a picture of the American dream and how it is attainable to a certain extent at least. And then I also went to a very diverse high school. I went to a high school in Palo Alto, and Palo Alto was separated from west and east side. The west side was very educated. It has Stanford. It has a lot of the students were the children of these Stanford professors, highly educated. And the east side, which was redlined back in the 50s, was the highest, was one of the most dangerous cities in the U.S. at that time in 1995. It had the highest murder per capita rate in the entire United States. I had the fortunate pleasure of knowing both sides. For the most part, they self-segregated. People hung out with mostly, their race or socioeconomic class, but I enjoyed being both an academic, just being well-rounded, pursuing high academia, but also playing sports, especially wrestling. And so I got to know people from both sides. So from an early age, I already had a lot of exposure over to what cultures, like the strengths and weaknesses of different cultures. And you can already surmise that the Westpolitans were mostly white people, and East Asians like Chinese, Japanese, Korean, and the East Palo Alto was Black, Latino, and Southeast Asian. And even though we went to the same high school, and there were some whites and Asians that that had their own issues too. I had, my family had severe domestic violence. I had to worry about fights every day for almost my entire life. Some of them were quite deadly even. But there was a very big difference in respect for authority, in work ethic, and views on premarital sex, and then views on higher education. Very big diaspora between these groups. And now I'm 37, and I have seen where all these avenues have went. So anyway, why I joined the left? Well, I joined the left because when I was 21, I fell very ill. I had worked very hard up until then, and I was sick throughout college, like around 19 and 20, and then 21 I felt really ill, and I found out why. And it was because the federal government, the EPA specifically, the Environmental Protection Agency, started putting a chemical called chloramine in the tap water. And this chemical was causing all sorts of health issues for who knows how many people, and also piping issues. It was It is disastrous. It's still here, actually. Many people still don't know about it. But this chemical was destroying my immune system. I'm going to go just kind of quickly show you during this time what I look like. For 5 years, I suffered immense allergic reactions every day, and my skin was weeping and bleeding from head to toe. I was bedridden, and I was weeping so many, blood and interstitial cellular fluid that I had to keep a towel around to wipe up the bloody mess. Needless to say, I was heavily, heavily oppressed. I mean, I lost it all. And I had very few resources available for me. This was before pre-existing conditions was removed, so I had no health insurance for a while. I didn't qualify for disability because my illness was not recognized in the disability list. And I became even homeless at some point because, well, I mean, how are you supposed to support yourself when you're in bed all day and suffering? So I know firsthand the difficulties of being an American citizen and being disenfranchised, and I know personally the rage. I mean, the rage is what sustained me. I was so angry at life. I wanted nothing more to either resolve the problem or share the pain with other people. Because society had taken everything from me and didn't care. I had maybe one or two friends that maybe even called on me to see if I was alright. That's it. And then, of course, I didn't have any help from the institutions either, even though the institutions, the system is what nearly killed me in the first place. Fortunately, I did figure out it was chloramine. It took 4 to 5 years, laying in bed. I suffered an immense long time. And even after I found out it was chloramine and stopped using chloramine water, I was still very ill, and I'm still ill to this day, although it's much more under control. But when I was well enough to get out of bed and start walking around again, but still too ill to be very high functional, that's when I started to explore more. I started to go to ghettos, especially San Francisco's ghetto on the Tenderloin, to find out why people in society fail. And I found also the far leftist groups like BLM and third wave feminism, because they had that same narrative that the system is very oppressive and it makes people like vulnerable populations fail. And I totally bought into it. But then I started noticing a lot of inconsistencies in the narrative. For example, when I was on a Facebook group for Black Lives Matter, they were talking about reparations. And I said, I brought up reparations for Asians as well, like the Japanese that were interned in World War II, who had everything taken away from them, and they were only paid back a little bit. Well, their response was basically, F you. We don't care about Asians. Asians aren't Americans. They don't deserve anything. I literally got that from BLM people within that large Facebook group. And I'm like, okay, that's very hypocritical. And during this time, I was wandering these ghettos, and I was talking to homeless people, and I was even taking care of some. There were some heroin. There was one particular heroin addict that I was taking care of, a young lady that was that couldn't take care of. Well, she was basically, raped on a constant basis, mugged on a constant basis, and I was trying to do my best to protect her and to give her a little bit of food now and then and things like that. But it is what it is. It's and so I saw firsthand how people in the dregs lived, and I was one of them, and also how the leftist politics of San Francisco had ruined the city. Our governor, Gavin Newsom, and the mayor before him, Willie Brown, are largely responsible for the housing crisis, which really pushed out a lot of people into the streets. And then I also saw the same insane criminals come back to the streets again and again and again and again to rape and mug these the helpless woman that I was, trying to help. There were some points where I almost had to kill some of them. One was a maniacal guy, and just was about to charge the woman I was taking care of, and it looked like he had something in his arm. Anyway, we fled instead. I really wanted to. I was so sick of that guy. He was so dangerous to the people around him. And as I got to explore more, and then I started working security because it's a menial job that I could do, even when I was kind of sick. I talked to a lot of police officers as well, and I was just finding out that it's a revolving door. And it's a revolving door because these leftist policies are so lenient. They're so racially charged. Black people are oppressed, or Latinos are also oppressed. Just, kind of like, I felt like there was too much leniency on that part. And I was seeing that. I was seeing the same criminals come back again and again and again to terrorize non-violent people on the street. It was very frustrating. And another woman I was trying to help out, a Latina woman, she was a victim of a domestic violent relationship. And that boyfriend was put in jail and then was out in just a couple months. And guess what he did? He came back and nearly killed her. He invaded her house and beat her up. Fortunately, I had me and her had kind of gone over a plan, on escaping, and I showed her enough martial arts to at least survive, and it worked. She was able to escape his grasp, and I don't know where he is now, but these are the kinds of things I'd see all the time. So all of it just painted this picture of leftists really don't know what they're talking about. I think some of them are good intention, but there's a lot of people in these movements who are only seeking to gain from it. It's not really social justice. I mean, is anything really social justice? It is special interests, or in other words, I think social justice is basically special interests in general, because you just can't talk to them about like the overall big picture and details. They don't want to listen. So anyway, I'll wrap it up soon, but it's been entirely frustrating, and I kept it mostly to myself, all this darkness to myself. But now I'm healthier. I've worked, enough money to be comfortable for a while, and I hope I can go back to what I studied in college, which was engineering. But for now, I'm doing okay, and I feel like I have the energy enough now to speak out about it, especially since it's at our doorsteps now. So many places are burning, and they're burning for the same reasons they burned decades ago in the 92 riots, the 60s Detroit riots. It's the same thing. It's the same excuses. And the people that get hurt the most by these stupid leftist policies are actually the minorities. Just like the woman I was talking about, the Latina woman and the other woman that was on the streets of San Francisco. I just had enough of it, like there was a time when politics was respectful, you believe what you believe, I believe, we maybe talk about it, but we don't talk about it at a social function. Now it's attacking us, and quite frankly, it's a little intimidating, it's a little freaky, because so many of these leftist politicians are letting violent criminals go, and then so many of the ordinary people who are only observing from their from their room, and they're getting it from their news from maybe one source, they're condoning it. It's very difficult living here in the Bay Area being someone who understands how these things happen, how crime happens, and the necessity of police, and all the details of how law enforcement works, and then being shouted over by all these leftists in their ivory tower. Anyway, I'm really glad to see campaigns like Walkaway. I think it's finally time that we put this social justice wave to rest, and we need to have discussions. We need to have logical, data-driven discussions, and we need to be detailed about things. Can't be oversimplifying things. These slogans, Twitter, if all you can say is just a few words, what does that create? It creates brainwashed people, right? Like, if you can only just talk about a few words at one time, we need to really sit down and have a long discussion about the ins and outs of why we have these problems, and what's the best way to resolve them. But that doesn't seem like the leftists are interested in doing that. So anyway, I thank this opportunity from the Walkaway community for giving me a way to speak, because that has been in short supply recently, and I have confidence that we will push back. I think most people will finally realize this, it has become a mob rule, and it completely defies that everything this country was built upon. But until then, try your best to stay safe and to just keep speaking out against the hypocrisy and true bigotry that these social justice movements have promoted. Thank you.